Good morning, everyone. Let's talk about the future. Your future. Not the one that simply happens to you, but the one you have the power to shape. The difference between those who thrive and those who remain stuck is not luck, not talent, but the rules they choose to live by. So today I want to share 5 important rules, not just theories, but principles that, if followed, will fundamentally change your future. We often wait for the perfect moment to take action. We convince ourselves that once we have all the answers, once the path is clear, once every detail is figured out, then we'll start. But that moment never comes. The truth is, waiting for certainty is one of the biggest traps we fall into. It's a comfortable excuse to stay where we are, to avoid risk, to delay the work that needs to be done. But those who create extraordinary futures don't wait for certainty. They move forward with clarity even when uncertainty surrounds them. Clarity is different from certainty. Certainty means having all the answers. It means knowing exactly what will happen before you take a step. But life doesn't work that way. No one can predict the future with absolute accuracy. No one knows how every decision will play out. And if you insist on waiting for that level of assurance, you'll spend your entire life standing still. Clarity, on the other hand, is about understanding your direction, even if the full journey is unclear. It means knowing what you stand for, what matters to you, and what kind of future you want to build. It's about identifying your purpose, your values, and your next step, even if the steps beyond that remain unknown. Clarity gives you the confidence to take action, not because you know everything, but because you trust that you're moving in the right direction. Think about the most successful people in any field. Do you think they had certainty when they started? No. They had doubt, they had fear, they had obstacles. But they also had clarity. They knew why they were doing what they were doing. They knew what mattered to them. And they understood that action, not overthinking, not hesitation, was the only way to learn, grow, and move forward. The problem with seeking certainty is that it often disguises itself as logic. It feels like we're being responsible, making sure everything is perfectly planned before we begin, but in reality it's fear. It's the fear of making mistakes, of failing, of not being good enough. And if we let that fear dictate our choices, we stay trapped in the same place, year after year, wondering why nothing changes. When you shift your focus from certainty to clarity, everything changes. Instead of obsessing over the unknown, you start asking different questions. What do I want? What impact do I want to make? What feels right for me right now? And once you answer those questions, you act, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, because the only way to gain real clarity is by moving forward. Action creates momentum. It gives you real-world feedback. It helps you refine your direction. And over time, the picture becomes clearer, not because you waited for the perfect moment, but because you created it. This applies to every area of life. In careers, people often hesitate to switch jobs or start a business because they're not sure if it will work out. But no one is ever sure. The only way to know is to take the leap and learn along the way. In relationships, people hesitate to commit because they fear making the wrong choice. But no relationship comes with a guarantee. It grows and evolves based on the effort you put in. In personal growth, people hold back from pursuing their dreams because they're unsure if they have what it takes. But confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build through action. At the end of the day, clarity is about trust. Trusting yourself, trusting your instincts, trusting that even if things don't go as planned, you have the ability to adapt, learn, and adjust. The people who change their futures are not the ones who have everything figured out. They're the ones who step forward even when the road ahead is uncertain, because they know that clarity, real clarity, comes from movement, not from waiting. Most people approach life as if it's a game they need to win. They measure success by how much money they make, how fast they climb the career ladder, or how many achievements they can collect. They compare themselves to others, constantly chasing milestones that make them feel like they're ahead. But what happens when they hit a setback? What happens when the game doesn't go as planned? They feel like they've lost, they get discouraged, they stop playing. This is the problem with seeing life as a game with a finish line. It makes us believe that success is about beating the competition, reaching a final destination, or achieving some ultimate victory. But the reality is, life doesn't work that way. There is no final score. No one is keeping track of wins and losses. Life is not a finite game with a clear end. It's an infinite game. And those who understand this change the way they think, the way they act, and the way they grow. An infinite game is one that never truly ends. The goal is not to win, but to keep playing, to keep improving, to keep learning. In an infinite game, there are no permanent winners or losers. Only those who choose to keep going and those who quit. This shift in mindset is one of the most powerful things you can adopt because it frees you from the pressure of needing to get there by a certain time. Instead, it allows you to focus on what truly matters: growth, impact, and continuous progress. Consider careers. Many people approach their profession with the mindset of winning. They aim for a title, a salary, or a level of recognition, but what happens once they get there? If they see their success as a finish line, they start to stagnate. They stop learning, stop challenging themselves, and often lose motivation. But those who embrace the infinite game never stop evolving. They don't see a job as something to conquer. They see it as an opportunity to constantly improve, to refine their skills, and to contribute in more meaningful ways. That's why some people remain passionate about their work for decades, while others burn out after just a few years. The same applies to personal growth. If you see self-improvement as something you achieve once and then move on, you limit yourself. You might read a few books, take a few courses, and feel like you've done enough. But real growth never ends. There is always more to learn, always more to explore, always more ways to push yourself. The people who make the greatest impact are not necessarily the ones who start out with the most talent. They're the ones who commit to lifelong learning, the ones who keep playing the game even when it gets tough. This mindset is also crucial in relationships. Too often, people treat relationships like a checklist. Find the right person, get married, settle down. But if you believe that once you've won a relationship, the work is done, it starts to deteriorate. A strong relationship, whether personal or professional, is an infinite game. It requires ongoing effort, communication, and growth. The most fulfilling relationships are built by people who understand that love, trust, and connection are things you cultivate continuously, not things you achieve once and forget about. Perhaps the most important part of embracing the infinite game is how it changes your relationship with failure. In a finite game, failure feels like the end. If you lose, you're out. But in an infinite game, failure is just a part of the journey. It's feedback, a lesson, a stepping stone. The only true failure is quitting. The people who create lasting success are not the ones who never fail. They are the ones who refuse to stop playing. When you stop chasing short-term wins and start thinking in terms of the infinite game, everything shifts. You stop worrying about how fast you're moving compared to others and start focusing on whether you're growing in the right direction. You stop fearing setbacks because you realize they're not roadblocks, they're part of the process. You stop seeking validation from temporary achievements and start building something that lasts. At the end of the day, success is not about getting ahead. It's about staying in the game, continuously improving, and making an impact that extends beyond yourself. Those who understand this don't just change their future. They create a legacy that lasts far beyond them. Leadership is often misunderstood. Many people believe that to lead, they must first achieve power, authority, or recognition. They think leadership is about being in charge, giving orders, and having others follow them. But true leadership is not about status. It's about service. The greatest leaders in history, the ones who built lasting influence, did not start with a desire for authority. They started with a commitment to serve. The best leaders are not those who demand respect, but those who earn it by lifting others. They understand that leadership is not about standing above people, but standing beside them. When you prioritize serving others, helping, guiding, and empowering them, you build something far greater than personal success. You create trust, you create loyalty, you create impact. The mistake many people make is thinking that leadership begins with a title. But leadership is not a position, it's a responsibility. It has nothing to do with whether you have a fancy job title or a team reporting to you. It has everything to do with your willingness to help others succeed. A leader is the person who steps up when someone is struggling, who shares knowledge instead of hoarding it, who listens before they speak. In organizations, the most successful teams are led by those who serve their people, not control them. A leader who serves creates an environment where people feel valued and supported. They don't micromanage, they empower. They don't take credit for the team's success, they give credit where it's due. They don't see employees as tools to achieve a goal, they see them as individuals with potential. And when people feel supported in this way, they give their best effort. Not because they have to, but because they want to. This mindset applies beyond the workplace. In personal relationships, serving before leading strengthens trust and connection. A parent who serves their child by teaching and guiding rather than simply commanding earns a deeper level of respect. A friend who supports and listens rather than always seeking attention builds stronger bonds. A partner who serves in a relationship by prioritizing the other person's needs creates love that lasts. One of the most powerful aspects of servant leadership is that it shifts the focus from personal gain to collective success. Many people chase leadership positions because they want recognition, authority, or financial rewards. But true leaders don't focus on what they can get, they focus on what they can give. Ironically, this approach leads to even greater success. When you invest in others, people People want to follow you, support you, and help you succeed in return. History is filled with examples of servant leaders who changed the world not by demanding power, but by dedicating themselves to serving others. Mahatma Gandhi led a movement by putting his people first, showing through his own actions what change looked like. Mother Teresa didn't lead from a place of authority. She led by serving the sick and poor with unwavering compassion. Even in business, the most admired leaders are those who prioritize their employees and customers over short-term profits. There's also a personal reward in serving before leading. When you focus on making a difference in others' lives, your own life becomes more meaningful. Leadership built on self-interest feels empty. But leadership built on service creates fulfillment. It gives you purpose. It allows you to wake up every day knowing that your work, your actions, and your influence are making someone else's life better. The world does not need more people chasing power. It needs more people willing to lift others up. Leadership is not about being the strongest, the loudest, or the most authoritative. It's about being the person who cares enough to help, who leads by example, and who understands that true success is not about how many people serve you, but how many people you serve. If you want to change your future, start by serving others, because the ones who serve first are the ones who truly lead. Most people see discipline as something restrictive, something that takes away their freedom. They associate it with rules, structure, and limitations. They believe that to be truly free, they should do whatever they want, whenever they want. But in reality, the opposite is true. The people who lack discipline are the ones who struggle the most. They feel trapped by their own bad habits, unable to break free from procrastination, distractions, and impulsive decisions. True freedom does not come from avoiding discipline. It comes from mastering it. Discipline is not about punishment. It is about control. It is about taking ownership of your actions, your time, and your habits. When you have discipline, you are in charge of your future instead of letting circumstances control you. Without it, you become a slave to your emotions, urges, and external influences. You might feel free in the moment when you choose comfort over effort, but over time, that lack of discipline leads to regret. Think about health. If someone eats whatever they want, never exercises, and ignores their well-being, they might feel like they're enjoying freedom, but what happens in the long run? They lose energy, they develop health problems, they become restricted by their own body. On the other hand, someone who has the discipline to exercise and eat well gains strength, energy, and longevity. Because of their discipline, they have more freedom to move, explore, and enjoy life. The same applies to financial freedom. Many people spend money impulsively, living paycheck to paycheck, believing they are enjoying life without restrictions. But over time, that lack of financial discipline traps them in debt, stress, and dependence. Compare this to someone who saves, invests, and spends wisely. They may have to make sacrifices in the short term, but in the long run, they gain true financial freedom. The ability to make choices without being controlled by money. In careers, discipline is what separates those who succeed from those who remain stuck. It is easy to procrastinate, to avoid hard work, to wait for motivation before taking action. But those who rely on motivation will always be inconsistent because motivation comes and goes. Discipline, however, remains. It is the ability to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. And that consistency is what leads to real success. Great athletes don't train only when they feel like it. Great writers don't write only when inspiration strikes. Great leaders don't show up only when it's convenient. They build habits that allow them to perform at a high level every day, whether they feel motivated or not. That is why they succeed. Their discipline gives them the freedom to reach their full potential. Discipline also gives you mental and emotional freedom. When you develop the habit of self-control, you are no longer ruled by stress, anxiety, or impulses. You learn to respond to challenges instead of reacting to them. You develop resilience, focus, and the ability to handle adversity. Instead of being controlled by circumstances, you take control of your own mind and actions. The most successful people in the world, whether in business, sports, art, or any other field, understand this truth. Discipline is not a cage. It is the key that unlocks real freedom. It allows you to design your life instead of living by default. It helps you create options instead of being forced into situations. It gives you the power to build the future you want instead of settling for whatever happens. So the next time you think of discipline as something that takes away your freedom, remind yourself of this. Every moment of discipline you apply today is a step toward a life with fewer limitations, fewer regrets, and more opportunities. Discipline is not something you have to do, it is something you get to do. Because in the end, discipline is freedom. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Most people see it as something to avoid, something that defines them, something that signals they are not good enough. But failure is not the opposite of success, it is a necessary part of it. Every mistake, every setback, every missed opportunity is not a reason to quit. but a piece of data that helps you improve. The most successful people in the world are not those who never fail. They are those who know how to use failure as feedback. They don't take it personally. They don't let it break them. Instead, they analyze it, learn from it, and adjust their approach. They treat failure like a scientist treats an experiment. If the result is not what they expected, they don't see it as defeat, they see it as valuable information. The problem is that most people have been conditioned to fear failure. From an early age, we are taught that mistakes are bad, that getting things wrong means we are not smart or capable. But this mindset holds us back. It makes us afraid to take risks, afraid to try new things, afraid to step outside of what is safe and comfortable. And this fear is what keeps people stuck, not failure itself. Imagine a child learning to walk. They don't get it right on the first try. They fall again and again. But do they ever think, maybe walking isn't for me? Of course not. They instinctively understand that falling is just part of the process. They adjust, try again, and eventually succeed. But as we grow older, we forget this. We start believing that failure is final, that it means we are not capable. The truth is, we were never meant to stop failing. We were meant to get better at learning from it. In business, the greatest innovators are those who embrace failure as data. Thomas Edison famously tested over 1,000 materials before he found the right one for the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he didn't see them as losses, he saw them as discoveries of what didn't work. Every failure brought him closer to success. The same principle applies to entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal development. If you let failure define you, it will. But if you let it inform you, it will shape your future success. The same is true in relationships. People often take failed relationships as proof that they are not lovable or that love isn't meant for them. But a failed relationship is not a sign that you are broken. It is data. It teaches you about what works, what doesn't, what you need, and what you should avoid. If you reflect on your failures instead of running from them, you gain wisdom that helps you build something stronger in the future. In any area of life, fitness, career, personal growth, the key is to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing failure as an endpoint, see it as information. If you fail at a fitness goal, don't quit. Analyze what went wrong. Were your expectations unrealistic? Did you lack a system? Did you need more consistency? The failure is giving you an answer. The same applies to any goal. The only real defeat is refusing to use the data that failure provides. This is what separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. The people who achieve the most in life are not necessarily the most talented or the most intelligent. They're the ones who get back up, analyze what went wrong, and adjust their approach. They know that every failure carries a lesson, and those who learn from failure will always be ahead of those who fear it. So the next time you experience failure, don't ask, why did this happen to me? Instead ask, what is this trying to teach me? Shift your mindset from one of defeat to one of discovery, because failure is not a reflection of your worth. It is a tool for your success. It is not the end of the road. It is part of the journey. And the only true failure is the one you refuse to learn from.